It's taken a long time for us to be here, but we are here and we are grateful, right? We're grateful to all of those before us. I am Melissa Moreno, community leader, elected leader. I'm also an ethnic studies faculty and educator, as well as a UC lecturer, and so very grateful to be here. It is my honor to introduce Brandon Minto, Director of Federal Government Relations, Government and Community Relations at UC Davis. And then next with us, here we have also the honor to hear from Roberto Rizo, Field Representative for U.S. Senator Padilla's office. If we can please welcome both of them. Director Minto.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Roberto and I were just commenting. We're both alums here, so I don't know how many sessions you've had two alums up at the table, but we're excited that we're able to represent UC Davis here in this one. So I'm Brandon. I'm the Director of Federal Government Relations. It's an honor to be here with you today, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the work that I've been undertaking on behalf of the university with respect to our HSI status here at UC Davis. And so the Government and Community Relations Office, just so you know, we're an office, a unit of the Office of Chancellor and Provost, and so we serve at the behest of the university, and my job is to connect the university with the federal government and really be the main advocate or lobbyist on behalf of the university. And so anything having to do with the federal government, the administration, members of Congress, our senators, ideally I'm the person who's working on behalf of UC Davis on that engagement. And so with respect to this HSI issue, it really came onto my radar in earnest in the early part of 2021. And so at this point, right, we're a year into COVID, just started a new administration. We had our third COVID relief bill come, and surprise, surprise, UC Davis still at that point had not received any federal funding through COVID relief for HSI schools through the Minority Serving Institution program. And so we were disappointed. We had been trying to get that money. We felt that we were an HSI. In fact, in 2020, we had written multiple letters. We had engaged our congressional delegation, and the Department of Education had actually told us that based upon the 2018 IPEDS data, we were an HSI. And yet, we weren't getting any of this federal funding that was specifically created for the purpose of helping those minority-serving, Hispanic-serving institutions. And so we're like, what the heck's going on with this? Why are we not getting any of these resources? So we did a real deep dive. And at this point, that's when I found out that IPEDS, and that stands for the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, try saying that 3 times fast, they have this really weird accounting metric whereby our undocumented students weren't being counted towards ethnicity for any particular ethnic group, not for Hispanic, not for Asian. So if you were undocumented, your ethnicity was not being counted by the federal government when the Department of Education was determining the demographics at a particular institution. What's worse is we found out that not only were these students not being counted, their ethnicity was not being counted, but they were actually being counted in the total. So the total amount of students, right, those undocumented students, they were included in that number, but they were not included in any numerator for any demographic, for any ethnicity. So it worked doubly against the student, against the institution, right? It lessened the impact of any one demographic on campus because you had a bigger total, but a smaller numerator. This is wrong. We did not agree with that. So we really worked in earnest to try and move the needle on that. We wanted to change the status quo. So I immediately started working with our system, with UCOP, right? And so this is not a UC Davis issue. This is a University of California issue, right? And wanted to get the system on board, like, hey, this is important. It's impacting us very immediately here at UC Davis, but it impacts everybody in the system, right? Because this whole segment of students not being counted. So got it on the radar of the UC system. We really started talking about it, understood exactly how it was impacting UC Davis. And in that year, in 21, it was stark. And so I have some numbers here I want to quickly read. So from fall 20 to fall 21, the percentage of the total population of Hispanic students actually dropped from 24 to 23.7%. So we went down from 20 to 21, but the total number of Hispanic students at our institution actually increased. And so it was one of these weird dynamics where we're serving a ton of Hispanic students, really, upwards of 7,000, more so than 90% of the HSIs, yet we're not getting this designation. And we're just under the threshold. And then if you actually look at the undocumented student population, had they been counted in 2021, we would have been at 25.1%. And so it really effectively meant that there was a huge amount of federal resources that we weren't able to capture, but really, frankly, we felt like they were intended for our population, right, for a school like us. So we sent a letter to Michelle Aisha Cooper, who was the acting secretary for post-secondary education in March of 21, and laying this all out, saying, hey, this is wrong, look at this accounting, the way in which you guys are, looking at undocumented students, it's not fair. And really, it did kind of a full court blitz to try and bring awareness to the issue. We engaged our congressional delegation, we engaged our Senate offices, we engaged our members of Congress, really tried to bring awareness to the issue to say, hey, this is a problem, we don't think it's fair, we think that this is missing the intent of the legislation that you guys have been passing. You guys have been passing these CARES Acts, these COVID relief bills with resources for this population. It's not making it to the population you want to help. We started talking to external stakeholders like HACU, really tried to build a coalition of support, like, hey, are you aware of this? Is this impacting your stakeholders? Is this impacting your institution? And, at the end of the day, at the federal level, it's so important to have that coalition of support, right? Because if it's viewed as just a California issue or just a UC Davis issue, good luck getting, the senator from Minnesota or from, Montana or whatever state to agree to it, right? So you have to find that common pool of entities that are impacted by it, that are affected by it, so that you could actually move the needle on the federal level. And so we're kind of going through this process. We're banging our hands against the desk, trying to make noise about this, and not really making much traction. I met with the Department of Education, the higher education entity under post-secondary education, along with the UC system. We talked about the program, talked about how it's negatively impacting us, the way in which this interpretation of the IPEDS data is meeting the road. And we're hopeful to see some action, but sometimes, the mills grind slowly, as they say. So this was all in 2021. Didn't really see any sort of resolution. We were considering two pathways, essentially. One would have been a legislative fix, and so we were engaging our congressional delegation, our senators, our members of Congress, talking about this, like, hey, we might want to pursue a legislative fix, talking to HACU about that, trying to get that coalition built up. But, enacting legislation at the federal level, particularly in the area of immigration, it's just not easy. It's a tough lift. We were aware of that. And so our preferred pathway was actually going through the administration, right? And so the Department of Education, they can undertake a rulemaking process where they can affect things like the way in which IPEDS looks at that data and acts on it. So we're continuing to bang that drum. And I'm happy to say that in the early part of 22, the Department of Education actually opened up comment period on IPEDS, so they were looking at that rule, which that was a great thing, right? So like our efforts had actually been gaining some traction, had made an impact. Department of Education opened it up. So worked with the UC system, and we got, on behalf of the entire University of California, a comment letter submitted to the Department of Education that talked about the IPEDS system, the way in which they did that accounting, how it was really unfair to undocumented students, especially that you're going to count them in the total population, but you're not going to count them towards any one particular ethnicity. Like, what the heck, guys? So we did that, submitted our comments in April, and I'm really happy to say last August, a final rule was issued by the Department of Education, and now, IPEDS, there's a place for you to mark the ethnicity of an undocumented student. And they now provide instruction that that is how universities should report moving forward. So a huge win. We were super excited about that outcome. It was definitely a long time coming. I mean, literally a couple years of banging our head against the wall. But finally, right was done, and we got the outcome that we were striving for. So that was a huge just lift to be able to see that across the finish line, and a big sigh of relief. So we're really excited about that. And one other thing that I did want to touch upon before I hand the microphone over to my colleague is, so at Government Community Relations, one of the things that we do is outreach, right? And so we we do these quarterly congressional briefings, and the whole idea is to shine light on some aspect of UC Davis, to share with our regional congressional delegation, to help inform them about who we are, what we do, what matters to us, right? So examples would be, I've taken the congressional delegation up to Lake Tahoe. I've taken them out on the Tahoe boat to talk about the importance of the science at Lake Tahoe, the federal funding that enables it, why it matters. We've taken them to Bodega Bay to talk about our marine research and why that's important, down to the Napa Field Station to show them smoke-tainted wine. And so we do a lot of these quarterly engagement things, right? So last year, almost a year ago to the date, we did one specifically focusing on HSI efforts at UC Davis. And this is, right now in 2020, March of 2022 is when this occurred last year. And we were in this limbo, right? We didn't know what was going to happen with our eligibility. We didn't know what was going to happen with that rulemaking process. And the whole idea was, look, regardless of whether or not the federal government acknowledges us as an HSI, we consider ourselves at UC Davis a Hispanic serving institution. And so we wanted to take that opportunity to kind of put our money where our mouth was and say, look, regardless of this designation, we are taking these steps to focus on this group, to enhance the opportunities and the outcomes here. And so we built in a whole briefing for our congressional delegation on the HSI efforts at UC Davis. We had a really good agenda. We talked about our HSI initiative, about the Hispanic student population at UC Davis. We talked about beyond enrollment, right? Taking them through from not just acceptance, but actually like the whole collegiate experience and graduation. We talked about the student success framework, achievement goals and strategies, programs and services like the Center for Latinx and Chicana Student Success, and the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center, the AB 540 Center. And so I'm seeing that my time is up, so I'm gonna just close with this type of outreach is important, right? And Roberto came and we engaged with his office. We talked to him about the importance of this program, why it matters to UC Davis, and really what we're trying to do in order to help these students and move the needle on that agenda. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to my friend and colleague, Roberto.
Thank you, Director Minto. Representative Rizo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. I know days like this can get long, and I want to thank UC Davis because, we had incredible panels coming before us. We had great conversations in between panels, and we have a lot of coffee out there. So that was great logistics from everybody here. Thank you so much. And yeah, my name is Roberto Rizo. I'm the Northern California representative for Senator Padilla. I've been working with the senator for almost 6 years now. I started working with him at Secretary of State. And now I work with him at the U.S. Senate. And I want to cover three things today, during the time that I have with you. I want to talk to you about how the senator has supported Latino and Latina students, higher education, students going through higher education and HSIs. I want to talk to you about the Hispanic Serving Institutions Caucus that he co-funded in the Senate. And I want to talk to you about how to best engage with our office and other congressional offices and elected officials, which is a key piece in order to be able to elevate the work that you all do. So in all the years working with Senator Padilla, as I mentioned, 6 years, I've always seen that he is always working towards equity and inclusion. He puts that at the beginning of everything that he does. He wants to make sure that the people of California and the U.S. are truthfully represented and served, which at the end of the day, that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? So, like a lot of us and some of the students that you serve, the senator is a child of immigrants, and he's a first-gen higher education student. So, when he went to MIT to get his bachelor's degree, he had to leave his home in Pacoima and what he knew to go and get immersed in another very different city, and very different place, and learn a lot of the things that we learned on his own. Right, so he understands what it is to be a first-gen student. So in the Senator, not only do we have the first Latino U.S. Senator to represent California, right, which is incredible to think about. We're 40% of Californians, and this is the first one that we get. It's amazing. I'm pretty proud of him of that. And also we get someone that understands what it is to be from the U.S., to be an American, but also to be a child of immigrants, and a first-gen going through all of these issues, right? So he understands that. And throughout his time, first at the state Senate, he worked on streamlining the process for community college students to transfer into four-year institutions, which is huge, right? Because we know that a large population of community colleges or community college students, myself included, we are Latinos, right? So it's important for us to be able to better understand how to get to where we need to be, because it can get confusing. So he saw that, and he did something to try and help. Now at the U.S. Senate, he co-founded, as I mentioned, the Hispanic Serving Institutions Caucus, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Let me see. I want to make sure that I'm not. Yeah, so he co-founded this caucus because he saw the need, right? We have the largest number of HSIs in the state of California. How come there is not an HSI caucus in the U.S. Senate? We had to get that done. So he saw that need. He worked on it, and he co-founded that with Senator Menendez, which is huge. And last Congress, he introduced the Hispanic Education Resources and Empowerment Act, which is the HERE Act, which ultimately would reward HSIs that collaborate with local schools districts serving large numbers of Latino students. That did not pass the Appropriations Committee last Congress, but it's in the plan to reintroduce that, for our team. So now I want to move on to talking about the HSI Caucus and why is this important, So the very first thing that I have here is we want to allow members of Congress to formally show their support to HSIs by joining the caucus. That's the first thing, right? We want to make sure that they come and that they say, okay, this is important. Let's see how we can help. That's the first thing. The second thing is we want to increase awareness of the value and impacts of HSIs with members of Congress and their staff, because there's HSIs in 28 states throughout the U.S. And, a lot of their efforts are not really understood by some of the Congress members and senators, right? So we want to make sure that by joining these, they can be understanding better and, educate and get educated on what it is that you're all working on. And the third one is to increase federal investment on HSI, right? Which is important and absolutely a priority. And we've already seen, the effects of forming this caucus and having, all representatives really pushing to get more HSI funding. So in for fiscal year 2021, HSIs received $221 million. That's already an increase from the previous year. And then 2022, $269 million. That's a $40 million difference. And 2023, $319 million. So that we're seeing almost $100 million difference in 2 to 3 years. You know why? Because we have representatives that are really trying to get funding and that are understanding the need to be able to educate and better prepare schools to onboard Hispanic students, right? So absolutely a must. Let's see. Additionally, launching the HSI Caucus has improved visibility for HSIs across the U.S., and I think we've all seen that. Even for our office, we are receiving a lot more calls, from different universities to try to meet with us to talk about this specifically, which is huge. It's the only way the only way for us to help is from hearing from you all. And what are the goals of this group is funding, recognition, and representation. Those are the top priorities, but also the caucus wants to elevate the conversation, through events like this, where we can hear from you all and really talk and create that connection and understand what's going on. It's, the way that we believe that we can get ahead and really get more things done. And ultimately, the senator understands that investing in HSIs is a strategic way to both enhance the U.S. competitiveness in the global economy and also to promote equity in higher education. We know that these investments are going to make us continue to be a global. I don't want to use the word power. That's not. A global. Influencer, right? That's better. People like influencers nowadays, right? But yeah, we want to make sure that we continue to be a leader. Let's put it like that, right? We want to continue to be a leader. And in California, we know that diversity is our greatest strength. Diversity is our greatest strength. We together are making this state the best state. I mean, I'm biased, but I guess, so. Lastly, I want to talk to you about the strategies on how to better engage with our office, with elected officials to uplift your achievements and to communicate your needs with us. So engagement from HSIs with our office is key in order for us to be able to understand what's needed in different campuses and universities. And what do I mean by that? Thank you. There are a world of issues in the state, right? The U.S. The Senator Padilla represents 40 million people. So there are, we're working on homelessness, energy needs. We're working on, housing and climate action and, public lands. And there is a lot of issues that we're covering, right? So this is a priority for us. And we also, but the way to really, for us to understand, we can do as much research as we can, and we can look at the news and see what's going on, but the best way to get information is to hear from you all, and that's the reason you have people like Brandon, at most of the campuses, so that you can communicate your needs to Brandon, talk to Brandon, make him work. No, but in all seriousness, though, it's important for you to, not only students and staff and the faculty, right, really motivate them to talk about the issues to the government relations groups within the universities. I think, being in close communication, planning visits. He mentioned he took us out on the boat. That was supposed to be a joke, but no, he did. He really keeps us engaged, and we, in order for us to understand what's going on, same UC Davis, Sonoma State, Sac State, they're all Hispanic serving institutions, and they really try, to communicate with our office to see what's needed and what are the achievements, what have you achieved, what are you working on, and trust me, all of this relates not only to our boss, to the senator, but he also has conversations with his colleagues, right? That's the way we elevate this conversation, so that you talking to us. But yeah, just to recap, the HSI Caucus is important because it educates leaders and elected officials in the Senate and, even beyond the Senate about the importance of increasing support for the schools that are educating the increasing population of Latino and Latina students in the U.S. That's one, and to achieve increased representation and make sure that our elected officials, including Senator Padilla, are serving to the best of their ability the needs of HSIs and are actively engaged with what's happening. You need to talk to us. In order for the senator to better serve you, he needs to know what's going on. So, and I'm gonna end with one little thing, before I finish this. Some minor things that that students can notice. I don't think I want to share that anymore. No, but seriously, I was just talking to Brandon. When I came here, we have 40% of Latino students or Latinos in California, right? And we were just talking about, that when I came to UC Davis, the first time I had lunch here, I had my Mexican lunch. I had a tortillero, I had a whole avocado, I had salsa, sour cream, cheese, a whole chile relleno that my mom packed for me. It was a whole table of things. But I had no tortilla heater. I had no comal. And I was like, dude, how come there's 40% of Latinos and we still have no comals in the schools, man? But hey, thank you so much, everybody.
On that last point, real quick, so I think it's important to acknowledge the importance of meeting people where they're at, right? And when Roberto was telling me that story, I really feel like that is an example of that. And it immediately made me think, so I used to work for Congressman Garamendi, and back in 2009, he was working on the NDAA, he was on the Armed Services Committee, and believe it or not, in 2009, the VA did not have any female joint templates to use in the VA when replacing a female veteran's joint. It was all male joint templates. And just a lot of it was, right, like if you look historically, the percentage of females that were in the armed services has been increasing over time, and just it was like a kind of a policy that nobody thought about that was left out behind, and finally they addressed it in 2009, and now I'm thankful to say that there's templates for female joint replacements within the VA, right? But this fell under that category to me, right? It's meeting the people where they're at, understanding the population that you serve, right? And being just sensitive to it. And so
we thank both the representative and director. Thank you so much for sharing your thinking. At this time, we're going to take questions, and we're going to start with the online questions. Are there online questions? Okay. All right, so we will move to questions that we have in this room.
I have a couple questions. Thank you so much for being here today. and for relaying our message to, especially to Senator Padilla. I serve, my name's Elizabeth Gonzalez. I serve as the inaugural director of HSI initiatives at UCLA's Office of the Chancellor. And in my work with HSIs across the US, I recently traveled to CSU Pueblo, Colorado. And now being at an institution like UCLA, I see the disparities in HSIs. We have almost 400 emerging HSIs, a lot of them that are highly resourced, right? And so I think that there's this disparity when you have an increasing number of HSIs that are going to be competing for the same pot of money that an institution like CSU Pueblo is going to be competing with. And so I'm hearing a lot of that surfacing, I think, in my work with HSI. So I wanted to know what efforts are being done to make this a non-competitive process. Why are we having to compete, 600 institutions competing for a pot of 263 million, right? So making it a non-competitive process. Also at the state level, a lot of what we see are federal appropriations, but what are we doing here at the state level for appropriations for HSIs? I know that Anna Peasy has received some appropriations here in California, so I'd like to hear more about where that might be going. And yeah, those two things.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a great question. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to speak about the efforts to make HSI a non-competitive process, and I'd be happy to find more about it and get it to you. I spoke a little bit about the HERE Act, which is a way in which schools that are engaging with school districts that have a high population of Latino students, they will be rewarded, right? That would be more of a competitive process, and that it's, kind of to incentivize that engagement. And I think, that was spoken about earlier where, we're talking about what are the efforts being done by each university. So I think that was the piece to incentivize some schools, and I understand exactly what you're saying, that some universities have more, the bigger staff. Maybe they don't have a government relations person, right? So like I get that, and I'm going to get more information for it. I wouldn't be able to speak about the state. I don't know, Brandon, if you have any more information on that.
I actually do federal relations, and so I'm not super caught up on the state. We can follow up with that, though. I have a colleague, Adrian Lopez, who handles state government relations, and I know he's been tracking this issue very closely. And I don't want to misspeak, but we'll certainly get that data from Adrian and then share that with the group. As far as the state money, on the federal and the non-competitive. So I did run into that a little bit when I went down this road in terms of trying to get UC Davis HSI eligible, and I was asked that question specifically, right? What about those other institutions that you would potentially be taking resources for? And so it's something that we're not insensitive to, and I think that our strategy has been trying to as much as possible grow the overall pie, to see as much resources as possible into that program, understanding it's kind of the idea like a rising tide lifts all boats. With respect to non-competitive, so that's a tough issue at the federal level. There's often been joked that there's kind of the ABC rule in Congress, and it stands for anywhere but California. And really, I jest when I say that, but California is such a big state, and there's so many people here that if we actually got our fair share of every federal program, basically all the money would be coming to the state. And so a lot of the other states are aware of that dynamic, and they push back on those kind of things, right? Because they want to get as much as they can for their state, for their people. And so something like that, taking away the competition, right, I think that you would run up against that ABC rule because like we've talked about in this state, how many emerging HSIs that there are, right? By taking away that competition, it just allows California to get a lot of those resources. And so politically, that's a pretty tough challenge with respect to the other states because they're not going to want to see California get all that money. But your point is duly noted and well taken. Certainly something that I, working for UC Davis, can 100% advocate for.
We have time for one more question before closing remarks. Comment or appreciation? Okay. Well, we want to thank both the representative and the director for encouraging us to be civically engaged. Education and leadership are unseparable. inseparable. So thank you so much, both of you, for your time, your energy, and your own like vision and engagement. Thank you.
Real quick,
So-
before I hand the mic away, I have to give a quick shout out to Senator Padilla and to Roberto in particular. And so California senators have it the worst in terms of the demand on their time, right? More people in this state than any other state. Every state has 2 senators. Roberto, if you even knew this guy's area of responsibility and the amount of counties he has to cover, it's no joke. And his office has been so engaging. Like literally, I'm talking to his DC team all the time about Farm Bill, about smoke taint stuff, about all sorts of issues of importance to the campus. Roberto, I sent him a text. He's immediately responsive. Like, it's not easy. I've worked with a lot of Senate offices, and I'm telling you, they're special. And I just want to say thank you.